Hi again, YouTube land. So, this podcast is going to be only a parent ever gets away with saying that. I posted recently about the passing of Davy Jones. I don't know if many of you saw it or not. Apparently, my dad finally decided to get around to watching this. And based on the topic, that's the one he chose to watch. Now, I called him earlier. And one of the first things he said to me about the podcast, not one of the first things he said, but about the podcast, was that he noticed it looked like I didn't want to be here. I kept rubbing my face and clearing my throat, and it didn't seem like I wanted to be doing this. But he did like the part about Davy Jones and us meeting him and Mickey Dolenz, so he played it when he hosted a midnight radio show on WMPG. Okay. First of all, yes, I have lately been rubbing my face a lot. That's got more to do with the fact that I've been on blood pressure medication the last 5 weeks, and I didn't have high blood pressure to start with, so it's affecting me in a different synaptic way. It's making me more tired, and I can feel it. And as many of us do, I rub my face in an effort to wake up. You know, it's not that there's anything significantly wrong with the musculature in my face. I'm just friggin' tired. Which says a lot given that I had chronic fatigue before I started taking the medication. As for clearing my throat, I have asthma. I'm also on several new medications, and it's winter, which exacerbates my pre-existing dehydration issues. I don't like to do it. I don't mean to do it. I know it interrupts the flow of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it and the timing of, what comes out of me. It's an involuntary thing. I don't have a choice about whether or not my throat suddenly feels blocked and I need to clear it. Excuse me. See? On top of that, I have severe sinus issues half the year. So, I've always got a postnasal issue somehow. Only a parent. Only a parent. And the reason he mentioned it, he even said, is because I remember you did a show with me once back when you were younger and you did the same thing. Okay, well, that story, here's what he's omitting. First of all, yes, I did it. Second of all, I was 10 at the time. Have you heard of nerves? Third of all, it was 2 weeks after I'd gotten over a very virulent case of walking pneumonia. I'd missed 3 days of school. I was so sick. And the only reason I did the show with him that day was because it was on the weekend. What he's also leaving out is that as a consequence of doing that, to prove to me why it was such a bad habit and how distracting it was, my mother, not my mom, not the woman I affectionately talk about now, my mother, who's long dead, made me listen to a tape of the broadcast with, those click, click, click kind of things. I don't know if they even still make them, but they used to have them in those handheld ones that had a button for individual, a button for the 10, a button for the 100, and a button for the 1,000, all in one little clicky thing. Well, my mother, for reasons I still don't remember and understand, had one and made me listen to a tape of the broadcast and click every time I did it. Over a 2-hour broadcast, I think I cleared my throat something like 70 plus times. And that's a lot. I admit that's a lot. I know that's a lot. But you got to understand all of those pre-existing factors. So my mother did a pretty serious job of shaming me into not speaking in front of groups of people. And it takes a long time to get over that kind of trauma. I mean, people, they hear stories about my childhood and my past and stuff, and they quite often have this response like, wow, you've had a really hard life. That's having to do that as a kid, having to do that as a teenager, that's more than you should have had to go through. Okay, well, you know what? I appreciate the sympathy. I appreciate the empathy. But it's too late. You know, if someone had been sympathetic to me when it was going on and done something to help prevent it from continuing, okay, okay. I'd be a lot more grateful. I'd be demonstrating my gratitude a lot more. But you're talking about events in my life that ended when I was 16. I mean, there's carryover. So I guess really I didn't come out of that whole detrimental phase until I turned about 20. But that it doesn't help me. I mean, the past is a critical part of who we are. We can't ignore it. We can't, well, you could ignore it, but you can't erase it. You can't change what happened, what was. You can alter how it affects what is. You can certainly regulate what it does to your future, what it will be. But you know, don't give me sympathy now. Don't tell me, "Oh, you poor thing, I can't believe you had a childhood like that." Because the reality is I didn't have a childhood. I had an age where I wasn't legally an adult, but that's not a childhood. A childhood is innocence. A childhood is very low on trauma. A childhood is being in a home where you feel cared about and taken care of and safe. I didn't have that. I didn't. And look, I give my dad credit for what he did try to do, most of which I didn't see at the time and I'm still having trouble identifying. But I believe he tried something. Not enough, but he tried something, and I give him credit for that. But you know, you don't get to selectively pull that crap out of a hat. You don't get to, for no apparent reason, mention things I did when I was a kid as a passing, semi non sequitur related anecdote. There's volumes of information you leave out when you do that. It's one thing when you're talking to a member of your family, someone who was there, when it's an inside the family thing, like between my dad and I, where I know what he's leaving out. And if I choose to let him leave it out to make the point he's trying to make, that's one thing. But you retell that information without all the history, and it's histrionics. That's what it becomes. But that's the kind of thing only a parent ever really gets to get away with. Because you know that if I tried that, he'd shoot me down. One of the first things he'd say is, "That's not how it happened. That's not how I remember it. Wasn't it actually this or this?" And mind you, this is from the same guy who 9 times out of 10 is likely to tell me, "Wow, your memory is amazing. I can never remember this stuff. How do you keep track of it all?" Because I have to. I'm the only one who knows it all. I'm the only one who went through everything I'm talking about, and I'm the only one who cares enough to remember it all because of how it affected me and is affecting me now, or effecting me. I mean, I get a little sketchy with the A and the E in that particular word. Either way, they're both true. But that's the kind of crap only a parent could get away with. But whatever. Hell with it. He said he played part of my, I told you, the Davy Jones podcast vlog. I don't even know what to call this thing. When he was hosting a show, I think it was Midnight Saturday, he said. So, I don't know how many people could have possibly been listening, but it's, college radio in Maine, so it's not like it really matters. But yeah, that was interesting. What else happened this weekend? I've had 1 or 2 back and forth tweets with Ann Wheaton, who I don't know if you know who that is. If you are a sci-fi person, you know who Wil Wheaton is. Because Wil Wheaton is one of those unusual characters who knew what he was getting into when he signed up for Star Trek The Next Generation. He had to. But beyond that, his intelligence and natural nerddom, yes, that's a word, comes through in the fact that he's parlayed that into a very respectable position and continued career. He took the fact that he was a nerd and said, no, 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 no. Outcast I will not be for this reality. And he made his roles work for him in the long term. And I don't know when, but he got married, as people do as they get older, to a lady he often talks about on Twitter, whose name is Anne. And I've only recently followed her Twitter feed. I had been following his for a while. I started following hers, and she and he, they're two peas in a pod from what I can tell. And she had made a couple of comments on Twitter, and I'd responded back completely not thinking. I mean, it's the same with all Twitter. You respond, and unless it's someone you actually know in reality in your everyday life, you never imagine you're going to hear from anyone. So when I got a retweet from Ice-T, I was shocked. When I got one from his wife Coco, who also favorited my tweet, I was shocked. When I tweeted a joke in response to something the comedian Jeff Dunham said, the ventriloquist, and he retweeted it and included that he found it funny, just ha 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 ha, I was surprised. So anytime I get a response from someone who has a name that is known by people, I'm always amazed. I'm amazed, I'm temporarily vaguely impressed with myself, and then I move on because I don't imagine I'm important enough for people who've made a name for themselves to really remember. I don't. I'm not that delusional. So that was part of my weekend. What else? 12 minutes. Man, I talk a lot. What else happened this weekend? Oh, okay. Personal achievement. This is that part of the blog. Saturday night was an employee event at the store my husband works at, Housing Works Bookstore Cafe in Soho. If you've never been, go. I don't need to sell it. Show up, you'll figure it out. But they had an employee event, and at the opening of the event, they had 2, what became 3 hours of karaoke. Now, as I said, my mother screwed me up horribly. So, despite having experience in chorus and choir in several schools, despite having vocal training and practice, I often deny the fact that I'm capable of singing, let alone singing well. So no one was more surprised than me that not only did I do karaoke, I did it 3 times in one night. I did ABBA's Thank You for the Music. I did Shania Twain, Any Man of Mine. And I did Cass Elliot, Dream a Little Dream of Me, which are 3 of my favorite female singers and songs. And I know ABBA is a 4-person group, but reality is only the women sang. So that's what I mean. And what really further shocked me is that I got compliments. Now, I'm not saying the people who complimented me were disingenuous. I'm 90% positive that's not the case. But I don't even know if I'd say pleasantly surprised. I was just, quite frankly, too surprised that people were saying, wow, you were so brave to do that, and you sing really well. I didn't know you could sing like that. I didn't know you sang. No, that's years of concentrated effort. I always knew in school I was special. I know how smart I am. I know what kind of writer I am. I know what kind of public speaker I am. And I know how well I can or can't sing or cook or whatever. That I choose not to show off what ability I know I have, it's up to me. That's why I keep it in reserve to surprise people with. But that was my weekend, and hopefully yours was equally entertaining and interesting. And I'll see you all next time.